This is one of those stories that you're not going to hear about in the mainstream, what I call the mainstream Marxist media or the national media, because it doesn't fit the culture Marxism paradigm. We found the story reported in the local media, but you will not find it in the national media. At least I was unable to find it. But you will notice this one thing about the story, is that it's very short. There's just not a whole lot to it. Let's take a look. The headline of the story says, white male murdered in Arkansas, no motive reported. And look how short the story is. 27-year-old Brian Smith of Crossett, Arkansas, was gunned down in the doorway of his home, reports say. No motive was reported. Arrested is 37-year-old Curtis Lumsey. Lumsey is black. Smith was white. I added that. The original article did not. The murder was reported February 21, 2017, and there is a picture of a photo of the victim, according to our sources, and the alleged attacker. Now, when I look at this guy's photo, that is the suspect. What that reminds me of is the movie The Green Mile. Remember that guy? I can't remember the actor's name, but he was huge. Big, monstrous guy. Kind of reminds me of him. But there's a difference between reality and Hollywood's fantasy. In Hollywood, black people are always innocent. Anytime you see a black person on death row in Hollywood movies, with few exceptions, but virtually every time you see a black person on death row or accused of a crime, he's always innocent because of white racism and white jury convicted him, but he really didn't do it. In the case of the what was it called, the Green Mile, the black guy who was executed for murdering little white children was innocent, and everybody knew it. Of course, it was fantasy. It's not a true story. Then there was the movie To Kill a Mockingbird. That was one of the original white guilt movies. And it seems ever since then, Hollywood has been careful to produce 3 or 4 white guilt movies every year to make sure that we understand that white people necessarily must always be the oppressors and black people are the oppressed. Of course, that's totally in contradiction with reality, where black people are always the oppressors and white people, well, with exceptions, white people are always the oppressed. And when it is reversed, rare occasion where white people commit violent crime against black people, such as in Charleston, South Carolina, that becomes a media firestorm. However, if this story had been reversed, a white person accused of killing a black person, this would have been on the nightly news. Every night, for weeks on end, no doubt. So the way that I like to say it is this. If white people, well, let me phrase it this way. The only place where white on black violent crime occurs routinely, only place on earth, is in Hollywood. Okay, with that in mind, let's take a look at another story. Very short, brief. They didn't say anything about that at all. They didn't even mention that it was black on white. I had to add that and the only reason I knew is because of the photographs. Let's take a look at this story. The first one, if I recall, was published originally February 21st, 2017. The headline here says, white business owner gunned down in broad daylight. If I recall, the homicide occurred about 1:30. Okay, so you got a 65-year-old white man, been working all his life, a productive citizen of society, a taxpayer, contributor to his culture. He owns an Army-Navy surplus store, which carries firearms. Okay, then allegedly, you've got 3 black thugs, 2 of them males, one of them a female. It seems that idea about working all your life doesn't appeal to them. This idea about being a contributor to culture and to society, being productive, doesn't seem to have any place in their worldview or their life plans. They want a shortcut. So what do? Allegedly? Well, they're identified as brothers Kemiani Grady and Lorento Grady and Shirley Harrington. I'd like to thank the mother of Shirley Harrington for giving her a normal name. That according to Greensboro.com, and assuming they're guilty, because they're innocent until proven guilty. Assuming they're guilty, it appears that what we have here, in my opinion, are three low IQ, low productive individuals who will never be a contribution to society. Instead, they will be a detriment to society. If they're out of prison, they will be a detriment in that they will commit crimes. If they're in prison, they will be a detriment in that taxpayers have to fund them, have to take care of them, have to house them, have to feed them, have to provide security, have to keep them off the streets at our expense. They are a detriment to society. So we have a contrast between white culture and black culture. Here's what the story tells us. 3 black suspects have been arrested after the fatal shooting of a North Carolina business owner. Reports say 65-year-old Jack Carter Little was found murdered in his Army-Navy surplus store in High Point, North Carolina. The elderly victim was white. The motive for the midday murder appears to be robbery. Numerous weapons were taken from the store, reports say, and then it gives us the names of the people arrested. Okay, now if you go over to the column to the right on my website, and you look under this section that says Pages and Departments, there is a link there that says elderly whites attacked by blacks. Now this list is by no means comprehensive. We found just a handful of them, out of who knows how many. Now if you click on that link, what you will come to is this page. Now when I say handful, there are literally hundreds of these stories that we found, but it's handful relative to all of them that are out there, because quite frankly, it takes a lot of time to find these stories, and even if you find them, because they're always buried in the local media and they never tell you about the races. You can only tell because of the photographs. And then it takes time to write up the story and post them, which I don't always have time to do, so there are a lot of these stories that simply are not here. But let's take a look at a few of them. 94-year-old white woman beaten by a fill in the blank. A 94-year-old white Chicago woman was beaten by a black purse snatcher. The next story, 89-year-old white man murdered, black male convicted. The next story, black male murders, rapes 84-year-old. DA wants death sentence. The next story, 9-year-old white woman murdered by dark complexion males. Oh, that means black. Okay. The next story, black teen sentenced after murder of World War II veteran, 91 years old. There's his picture. Next story, 67-year-old white man murdered. Suspects are black. The next story, Ethiopian black guy obviously arrested for multiple sex crimes in Oregon hospital. 87-year-old woman is suing the hospital. Next story, 75-year-old white woman murdered by black guy. There's his picture, allegedly. The next story, black male convicted of murder after beating white man to death. And we could go on and on and on and on. You have to wait for them to load. But there are literally hundreds of these that we found and posted. And that doesn't include all the ones that we didn't find, or the ones that we did find and didn't post. And this is one more that we could add. We consider elderly to be anybody 65 years old and older, so this guy is 65 years old, so he would be added to that list. So here's the question, folks. If there were that many elderly black people being massacred by white thugs, do you think this would be a media? Well, let's phrase it this way. A newsworthy story. Do you think the media would be talking about this nonstop? Absolutely they would. But because there is an epidemic of black thugs murdering elderly white people, the media just flat out ignores it. That's why I'm talking about it. Now, the weird thing is, when you get outside the cultural Marxism paradigm, because you're not supposed to talk about black on white crime, ever, even if it's elderly white people, you can't talk about it. Because in the cultural Marxism narrative, white people necessarily must always be the offenders, and black people must always be the oppressed. We are the oppressors, they are the oppressed. We are the bourgeois, they are the proletariat. It's quintessential classic Marxism. And if you get outside of that, the media just ignores it. They pretend it doesn't exist because it doesn't fit their fantasy world, which is a total contrast with the reality. Reality is white people are being massacred. Elderly white people in this country are being massacred by black thugs, and the media will not report it. But I will. Okay, what are they going to do? What are they going to do about it? Well, they're going to try to get me kicked off YouTube, which they've done 5 times. They're going to try to get me kicked off Facebook, which they've done more times than I can count. Literally, I can't even remember all the times. They will try to silence me. They will call me names like racist. I'm not a racist. I'm an anti-racist. If you were an anti-racist, you would be exposing this, which is what I'm doing. Besides that, I've got black ancestry. I can't hate myself, can I? Yeah, maybe I could. But, I'm just going to tell the truth. Now, keep in mind there are many conservative venues, conservative websites, conservative newspapers, conservative magazines, conservative YouTube channels, conservative Facebook pages that will not talk about black on white crime because it gets outside that paradigm. In other words, the cultural Marxists are telling conservatives what they can and cannot say, and the conservatives don't want to put up with it. That is, they don't want to put up with the frustration of being called a racist all the time for telling the truth. So what do? Well, they take the easy road, and they just don't talk about it. Well, I have chosen to take the tough road, and I'm going to tell the truth. I hate racism, but I also hate dishonesty. I love being honest, so that's what we do. If you agree with that, we encourage you to click the little button in the lower right-hand corner that says subscribe and become a subscriber to our channel. If you want to help get the word out, all you got to do is click the little button underneath the video, and it says share, and share this video on social media.
How to subscribe? Click subscribe. Click the bell. Check the box. Save.